This is Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details. Here are your hosts, Joe, Matt, and Chris.
What's up, everybody? This is Between the Uprights. I'm Joe. That's Matt. Chris couldn't be here with us today, but that does not mean we will not be giving you that great NFL football breakdown that you come to Between the Uprights for day in, day out, 24/7, 365. But first, before we get into all of that great NFL news, please hit that like and subscribe button for us. We would greatly appreciate it. We're just getting this thing started, and we need your support. We want your support, and we want to hear from you as well. Get in the comments of these videos, please. We love to hit right back to the fans. We love to be engaging with the fans, so please do that. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals stumbled out of the gate once again under Zach Taylor, and this was not how this was supposed to go for them. They had all of the weapons. They had Joe Burrow healthy. They had a good offensive line. The defense was supposed to be better. You know, they have all these weapons. They have all these tools, all these great players on this team, and yet they are mired at the bottom of the AFC North. In the division we thought they were going to have a chance to compete in and win possibly at the beginning of the year, does not seem to be that way. Their only wins have come against teams that realistically have a better chance of drafting in the top 10 than they do of making the playoffs this year. And Matt, I'm going to go to you on this one. Are the Bengals cooked?
No, I don't think the Bengals are cooked, Joe. I think there's a really, really good opportunity for this team to make a rundown stretch. And I'll give you a few reasons why. First of all, Joe Burrow, okay? I'm not counting any team with Joe Burrow out. He's a top 5 quarterback in football, and that's at the very modest end. He could easily be the second best quarterback in football, in my opinion. He's got a great argument for that. I am not counting any team with Joe Burrow out because we've seen this Bengals team struggle early in the season, midway through the season, and somehow down the stretch with Joe Burrow, they find a way to turn it on. So I'm not going to count the Bengals out strictly for the fact that they have Joe Burrow. Second of all, I'm not afraid of this schedule that they have. I'm simply not afraid of this schedule that they have. The next game they have is home to the Raiders. I'm not scared of the Raiders. I think they'll beat the Raiders. They have a couple, 3 straight difficult games, though. They have on the road at the Ravens, then they have at the Chargers, and then they have home to the Steelers. So those are 3 pretty good opponents. I think they'll have trouble with that. But I think they're going to go 5-0 to finish the season. I think they got at the Cowboys, who we've seen what the Cowboys do at home. They get blown out by 40 points pretty much every game. So I think you could chalk that up in the win column. You got at the Titans, who you see just got dropped by 40 points to the Lions. So then you got home to the Browns, who I think that's actually a tougher game now that Jameis Winston's at quarterback for the Browns, as we saw yesterday against the Ravens. But I would chalk that up as a win for the Bengals there. Then you got home to the Broncos, who are 5-3, but I don't know about the rest of you guys. I'm not really terrified of the 5-3 Broncos at this point. And then you got on the road at the Steelers in week 18. So I think they're going to win each of their last 5 games, and that means they got to win 2 out of their next 4 games, which, like I said, was Raiders, Ravens, Chargers, and Steelers to get to 10 wins. So I think this team is still going to get to 10 wins, although their defense is really bad. Like their defense, you look at any number that you look at, their defense is really bad. They played well against Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson, and other than that, they've been really bad. So if you play well against Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson, I'm not really taking you too serious, and then you look at everybody else they played against, they were bad. So the defense isn't great. They don't look great right now. And then you look at this team without T. Higgins as well. This team without T. Higgins offensively has not been good, okay? Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense's numbers with T. Higgins, the 5 games with them, Burrow's yards per game, 267 yards per game. The team points per game, 28.6 points per game, and the team record is 3-2, okay? Without T. Higgins, 215 yards per game. That's a 50-yard drop as far as passing yards per game goes. Team points per game goes to 17.3. That's an 11-point per game drop without T. Higgins, and they haven't won without him. They're 0-3, including a loss to our Jacoby Brissett-led New England Patriots in week 1, which is very, very hard to do if you're not the Bengals or the Jets, apparently. So they do not look good at all without T. Higgins. And T. Higgins has had a ton of injuries as well in his career so far. He's had a bunch of, I think I saw it was like 8 different lower body injuries in the last 4 years for Higgins. So he's been stacking up these injuries, and they have a hard time winning without him. And that offense does not operate the same without him. You see Jamar Chase on Sunday. The defenses are covering him. They're doubling him over the top. They're making sure they don't beat him over the top. He was like 9 catches for 54 yards yesterday. That's around 6 yards per catch. I don't know about you, Joe. I'm living with that from Jamar Chase. If he's getting 6 yards per catch, I'm not really scared if he gets 9 catches for 54 yards. That's a, Alvin Kamara running back check down stat line, like I'm not scared of that from Jamar Chase, so you see his stat line difference when T. Higgins is in there and when he's not, so T. Higgins brings that different dynamic into that Bengals offense that they really, really need him to be in there. But I do believe even if Higgins is in there next week, I think they're going to be able to beat the Raiders. And it doesn't seem like Higgins is going to be out for very long. So I think the Bengals are going to be just fine here down the stretch, because with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and assuming T. Higgins comes back, that offense is deadly, and I think they'll be able to outscore a lot of these teams down the stretch. So I don't think the Bengals are cooked. I still think this Bengals team is going to find their way into the playoffs.
I mean, I would like to believe they can, but I'm on the other side of this right now. They really have not performed against teams that, like I said, most of the teams they've won against have 2 wins. Like, they don't beat good teams. Every team they've lost to has been a playoff caliber team, whether T. Higgins is in the lineup or not. And it's not like the numbers have been bad all around for either the offense or the defense. I mean, I think the defense has not played up to par. I think they've definitely had some gaps. The biggest problem is that they consistently put the ball on the ground. I mean, they have put the ball on the ground in key situations. We saw it in the Patriots game. It's happened all year. Joe Burrow hasn't thrown that many picks. He's only thrown 3, but the fumbles are absolutely killing this team right now. And ball security is job security in the NFL, but the problem is they just don't have it. And I think the biggest problem with this team is that Joe Mixon is absolutely balling out in Houston right now, and they have no running back in Cincinnati. If there is one team that needs to add at the trade deadline, it needs to be somebody on the offensive side. The Cincinnati Bengals need to go out and find themselves a running back, because when Joe Burrow is your second leading rusher with 15 yards and your top leading rusher carried the ball 12 times for 32, and he's got a 2.7 average in Chase Brown, that is not going to win you football games. They have a serious problem running the football, which is probably the worst part of their offense. They can't hold on to the football when they get it in their hands. And, Mike Gesicki is your leading receiver in this Eagles game right now. He had 73 yards and a 10.4 average. So don't get me wrong, Mike Gesicki is a great receiving tight end. But when you have guys like Jamar Chase and, out there, you're not expecting Mike Gesicki to be the leader in receiving yards. It's just not supposed to happen. But, you do need someone to step up in T. Higgins' absence, and that might just be Mike Gesicki. The problem I see here is, you look at the schedule, and you pointed out, they have some tough games. You look at this, the Cowboys are trying to rebound right now. They're trying to get things there. We'll see what happens when they actually get healthy. Their entire defense is like most of their stars, Micah Parsons, Marshawn Nealon, who they brought in the draft, who I was really high on, has been out with a knee injury recently. And so they're starting to get healthy now. If the Cowboys are healthy by the time the Bengals roll in, that might be a tougher game than we anticipate, especially on the defensive side, where the Cowboys have thrived when they are healthy. The Titans right now, the winnable games on this schedule right now are the Titans and the Raiders. The Browns, like you said, with Jameis Winston, if Jameis is going to have Jameis Winston style games, that's a toss-up. If Jameis Winston comes out and has like peak Jameis Winston, like great, like 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks, you're cooked. You're done. It does not matter. All right. And we've already seen the Baltimore Ravens. We expect the Baltimore Ravens to absolutely be in the playoffs, right? The Browns with Jameis Winston beat the Baltimore Ravens. Now, granted, the Ravens had a lot of drops, both offensively and defensively, that kept Jameis Winston out of trouble. But still, it is you're hoping that you can get it together. I don't think they can. I think this season, get Zach Taylor fired. I think this is the end of the road. You don't have this much talent as a head coach and underachieve. All right. If Robert Saleh can get fired 3 weeks into a fucking year, Zach Taylor, after literally having one of the worst records through the first 2 weeks of a coach's tenure, I think he's something like 2-11 or 2-12 as a head coach in the first 2 weeks of the season since he's been with the Bengals. The Bengals do this shit all the time. Since can remember watching football, it didn't matter who the head coach was, how much talent they had on the sideline. This is what the Bengals do. They go out there and they underachieve, even with the talent. And we saw it with Carson Palmer. We saw it. You can just rattle off the names. Andy Dalton was there. They had killer offensive talent. And Tisha Gonzada, AJ Green. You can just go down the entire list of people. Like I said, Carson Palmer had Terrell Owens and Chad Ochocinco and some of these guys. Like, they have had good offensive teams and they have competed. But at the end of the day, the Bengals do what the Bengals do, which is they either don't make the playoffs because of injuries, or they're just not underperforming, or they're a one and done exit. I think, like, realistically, Joe Burrow's one run, for a Super Bowl was like the closest thing they've ever come. And since then, it's just been the same old Bengals. They had one gleaming glimmer of hope, right? Similar to the Browns, actually, which is funny because, let's face it, they're in the same state. They got some of the same colors. They do some of the same shit. Like Baker Mayfield led him to the playoffs, and then they ousted his ass and suck again. I don't think they're going to do that to Joe Burrow, but you look at this schedule, the Steelers are playing very well. Russell Wilson in his first game back under that Steelers offense with that Steelers defense absolutely balled the fuck out. The Chargers are starting to click right now. I mean, Ladd McConkey just had an amazing game, and they're starting to get things going there. That team's starting to click with a new head coach, new scheme, and everything's coming together there. The Steelers we just talked about. The Cowboys, they're getting healthy. The Titans, they should beat the ever-living shit out of the Titans. If they don't, then I mean, like they need to beat the Raiders to even keep this a conversation.
For sure.
I honestly would not be surprised if they only beat the Raiders, Titans, and Browns the rest of the way. I wouldn't, because the big thing about the Bengals has been that their secondary, they've been able to get ran down their throat all year. Mm-hmm. The Broncos have a good rushing offense. And they want to play the control of the ball game. Bo Nix just balled out against a Panthers team that even these Bengals only put 34 points up on. Like you look at Bo Nix stats, he 3 touchdowns, 268 yards. That's and then they messed around the rest of the game. Like, it was kind of done, right? I don't know if the Bengals can recover from this. Now, Joe Burrow came out and said it. He said it best. We got to get to 10 wins. He thinks that they can do that. He says, I think that we can win 7 of our last 9 games. I think we can do that. Got to prove it. It is going to be tough for them, and I don't know if they can do it.
Yeah, it's going to be like you mentioned, Joe. I think this week against the Ravens or against the Raiders, like you mentioned, is kind of like the Jets were this week against the Patriots, where it was like, hey, if you don't win this game, we were talking about this pre-show. If we don't win this game, you're going to have lifelong fans jumping ship. Like, there's going to be people who are getting off the bandwagon now because the season's over, right? You can't lose to the Raiders and then think, we're going to rattle off, our 7 of our last 8 against, like you said, teams that are a lot better than the Raiders. But see, again, some of those teams that you mentioned, Dallas, everybody can run on Dallas, and Dallas can't run either, but like you mentioned, the concerning part for the Bengals is they're really, really bad running the football. They're 28th offensively running the football. And then defensively, I think they're 26th against the run. So they're soft up front. That's what that means. They can't stop the run. You can't run the football. That means you're soft up front. But some of the opponents that they're playing are like that too. Cleveland's been like that. They haven't been able to run the ball, but that's going to get better with Nick Chubb. And then obviously Dallas, we just talked about. The Raiders are bad with that, So some of these teams that they're going to be playing also have similar weaknesses. But like you mentioned, it is going to be big for this Bengals team down the stretch to really, really, start getting it going, because they're another organization. I think people forget, like, this is an organization that also was really, really shitty for a really long time, because their owner, again, we've talked about this a lot, starts from the top down. Mike Brown is one of the worst owners in professional football right now. His cheap ass don't want to pay all of his best players. So again, it starts from the top down. Mike Brown is not very good, and it starts from the top down. This team just got lucky because they drafted one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football in Joe Burrow, and he's been kind of putting him on his back for the last few years. So it's a really, really important stretch here for the Bengals, because, if they don't make the playoffs for the second straight year, I don't know what you're going to do. You got T. Higgins in the offseason, who's going to be a free agent, who, like I said, he's really, really important to this team. So it's a lot of uncertainty in Cincinnati right now. So yeah, they better make a run, or else it's going to be problems in Cincinnati.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.